Happy New Year. It's 2024. I don't know about you. My 2024 feels very similar to my 2023 so far.
So far. Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
pretty similar. Let's just do this for an hour. Let's look at each other and occasionally go
It'll be better than what we usually do.
and shake our heads. The holidays are over and I am not yet recovered.
It takes a while for sure. Are you usually recovered by your birthday? So I mean that's like 3 weeks in. Do you feel
I
better by
don't
then?
know. I'm not sure I am. Like, this is actually a thing right now. We're taking a trip for my birthday.
Mm.
Not just for my birthday, because for my sister-in-law's birthday, because it's her 40th. So we're doing a
Yeah,
whole thing.
yeah, I think you have mentioned that already. Now that you mention it
And
again.
it's gonna be fun, I'm sure. And right now I would love to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, this is not enough time in between, but it's not like it's gonna be an active one. It's mostly gonna be us sitting around a really nice cabin in the woods doing nothing. So I'm not too worried. But yeah, I'm not there yet. Um this is also the time period I still can't buy things for myself because I
Mm,
might get them as birthday presents. So
mhm, mhm,
that's a thing to watch out for.
mhm.
Not that I have any money at the moment. Yeah, so I mean it takes a bit. And then of course the seasonal affective disorder kicks in, and that's why I'm gonna be a cowboy for months. Nobody talk to me. I'm just gonna be a cowboy. Um, to that end of recovery, it looks like we've suddenly gotten a lot of active comments on the blog and things. I have looked at zero of them. So apologies to our listeners. I'm sure William filled in the gap because he doesn't have a lot going on.
No, not
But I
really.
will get to them. Hello everyone. Welcome to the Magical Talking Hat podcast, the only podcast in the world that turned into a hardcore pornography channel so gradually no one even noticed. I'm Tony.
And I'm William, and this is episode 668. I mean, I didn't even notice that.
I was gonna say
Half the
I
time.
don't think I've ever seen someone with the I just realized I've been doing hardcore porn look on their face, but you
Yeah,
had
yeah,
it. It is
yeah.
nice. I hope somebody
It's
screen
a thing.
captures that moment.
I
He's like,
guess it's a thing.
wait a second. And then you put that. Oh,
It
that is one of
explains a
those.
few things.
That is one of those great Simpsons jokes that just keeps giving. That's from The Simpsons. Long, long ago, decades ago. Marge has a line. They turn off the TV and she says, I think it's one of their first like in the future episodes. And she
Hmm.
says something about Fox turned into a hardcore pornography channel so gradually I didn't even notice. Um, for those of you just joining us, welcome 2024. This is part of our 13th year. This is our 13th calendar year of making this podcast, and we have learned nothing. If you're just joining us, we have a hat. It is magical in that it has its own email address, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com. And people write into that email address, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com, with whatever the crap they want. And then we have to talk about it. Except that we spend a lot of time not doing that also. But I mean, if we got to define this as something, that's what it is. This is a hat. Magic emails. Here we are.
Here we are.
Oh, I forgot to do my I haven't seen you since last year joke. It's the only time you get to do it. I told the kids, I was like, are you telling all your friends I'll see you next year? Because this is the only time you can do that joke. And that joke is never not funny at this time. Only if you did it any other time, it'd be insane.
But it wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah. But then the counter is later, you'd be like, I haven't seen you since last year.
Hmm.
So anyway, how's your year going?
Good. So we had the kids over for New Year's, and that was nice. We finished watching Reacher, which,
Oh
you
yeah,
know, wasn't
I'm like
great, but
Jack.
it was okay.
Is it
We're-
interesting? I would not have picked that as a show either of you would have had any interest in.
So you're right. It's not a typical thing. But there were some actors in it in the first season that we liked,
And that can do it.
and we liked their performance, so we kept watching it. And I mean, it wasn't. It's like, it's not our thing usually, but it's not unwatchable or anything. And when you have good actors that you like in it, okay, that helps.
Yeah.
This season, one of those actors wasn't in it, and but they had enough stuff in it that kept it interesting, so we went ahead and watched it. It's not great TV. It's not like I would recommend it, but we did watch it, so I'm saying so. And we're watching the latest season of Fargo, and
So are we.
also also so to me, this season of Fargo is like when you watched Nolan's Batman's, the first one, and then you watch the second one, and then you watch the third one, and it's like, I don't think Nolan participated in this third one at all. It just doesn't feel like a Nolan Batman movie. Fargo this season doesn't feel like the other Fargos at all.
100%. And
Yeah,
on in the credits, it is the same people.
I know
Noah
it's weird.
Hawley wrote and directed the first two episodes, but it absolutely feels like someone who was a fan of the Fargo series made a TV show.
Not
Like,
very well.
yeah, no, it's not. And don't get me wrong, there are some amazing people in it, and they all give incredible performances.
Yeah, so it's
But
worth watching.
the show is just really nasty, grotty set pieces mixed in with so many monologues. And I know it's supposed to be Fargo, so monologues are part of the deal, but that's all anybody does. We have entire scenes just for someone to give a vaguely philosophical monologue and then leave. Um, there is no, in my opinion, there is not the emotion, the moral gray to it. There's just a lot of shitty people, and then some people who kind of aren't shitty. Some of the characters, I mean, and again, it's Fargo, so I'm trying to hold myself back and be like, we're gonna have an episode all dedicated to this one little character, and there's gonna be all this stuff. But for right now, some of the major characters have no personality to speak of, in my opinion.
Mm-mm.
Um, the only character I care about is the Swede, and that's because he's amazing. I don't know what the fuck he is, but he's amazing. He's the only real fun part of the show. Um, and yeah, it Fargo had to handle their outright villains very carefully. Billy Bob Thornton in the first season, the British dude with the bad teeth in the third season. Like, these were sort of almost supernatural evils. We have none of that here. We just have a lot of shitty people with some very hard on their sleeve life philosophies that I'm like, you're just an asshole. John Hamm being the best one, John Hamm's son being another one. I'm like, I am not interested in these characters. These are assholes. These are asshole misogynists. There's no depth, there's no complexity. They just suck, and they are some of the biggest characters in the show.
Yeah, and they're
Uh,
over the top in a not very entertaining way. Not entertaining at all way.
and
It's
Jennifer
just
Jason Leigh's character just tells me somebody's really mad at capitalism, which I can relate to, but that's all that tells me.
hmm.
It's
Wow.
just, I'm like, I don't like anyone. I'm not interested in where this goes. If I wasn't watching it with Trish, I would probably stop watching it. It's not. We are not entirely caught up. We are, I believe, 5 episodes in. I didn't realize how many episodes it was. So I thought we were basically done. And then I'm like, oh, we only got one or two more. And then I looked and suddenly there were a bunch more. And I'm like, oh shit. The season's not done. So, but yeah, I'm really unhappy for all that. I love the people. There's some really great people that I don't get to see enough that are doing amazing jobs. Um, but I, yeah, no.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page with that one. And we watched the latest season of Only Murders in the Building,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and it was really good. The
Yeah.
first season was good. Second season was, I mean, if you like the show, you'll like watching it, but it just didn't wasn't as good as the first season. This
Yeah,
season
yeah.
was very, very good. I always talk about Martin Short's performances in these things because to me, he's like he's just it's just genius performances. Everyone else does a good job too, but I'm always impressed if there's a really great scene, like you know the scene's over and you're like, that was a perfectly made scene. It was written well, it was acted well, it was shot well. He's in it, and he's a big part of what made it perfect. I mean,
Mm.
I've always thought Martin Short was a good comedian and everything, but I've never been impressed with him particularly as an actor. But man, he's just knocking it out of the park. So yeah, I totally recommend watching that show in general. If the second season disappoints you a little, go ahead and watch the third one because I thought it was
The
really,
third one
really
will get
good.
up there.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
good. But so yeah, but that, because Abby was off last week, so we got to kind of catch up on a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
we played a lot of Diablo also, so that was fun. So what about you? What did you do for the last week?
Very little, and I liked it that way. Um, Let me look what's on the thing. I don't think there's a ton. I've been watching dumb movies. I am pleased to say, oh, well, I should talk about what we have been watching. Okay, so we finished Poker Face, what will I believe be the first season of Poker Face. Um, it is a fun show. I mean, I do recommend the show. It's one of those things again with cozy mysteries. Like, don't watch it for the mystery. Like, that's not the point. I do love that every single episode was way weirder than I thought the show could get every time. Like every episode, I'm like, that was weird. Next one, I'm like, that was really weird. The next one, I'm like, this show is weird. Like, and it just escalated the whole time for 10 episodes. I was like, these are some bizarre things. It's very surreal in what I think of as a kind of Ryan Johnson way, where like you wouldn't believe it, and just bits and pieces you're like, that's not how a person would act normally, but in this sort of heightened environment it works. And I mean, Natasha Lyonne's a rock star. I love her. She really is kind of a one note at this point, but I enjoy that note a great deal, so that's fun. And a bunch of big stars come on because it's only for like one episode. I'd say there's a spoiler because if you see a really famous celebrity in the list, you know they're going to be the murderer or the victim. But again, as we established, it's a how catch 'em, so you always figure that out pretty early.
Yeah, so that's interesting because Columbo was that kind of thing,
Yes, yes.
like how to catch him or whatever. And as I thought of that, I realized she shares a lot in common with him, really. It's like,
Oh,
oh,
very much.
yeah,
She doesn't say one more question, but she has a lot of moments that are very like that. She's
yeah,
definitely giving big Columbo energy in a lot of
yeah,
her
yeah, yeah.
scenes.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we've seen like one or two and we liked them. I don't remember
Yeah.
what interrupted our watching it, and we'll probably get back to it
Well, and they
eventually.
don't really hang together. There is an overarching story, and it does occasionally show up in places, but mostly it just means that this one character shows up at the end of an episode and you're like, oh, he's close. Um, and then at the end of the season, it does resolve that story
Mm.
while very clearly setting up the way you can keep this going. And as far as I know, I mean the strike has thrown everything out of whack, but as far as I know, it was very popular and is renewed for a second season. So
Mm. Mm.
I'm excited for that. But now we are on to the second season of After Party on Apple, which we really enjoyed the first season. We've only watched one episode, but it's good so far.
Okay.
It is a little bit scary. So Trish watched this show on Apple called Blackbird, and it is everything I hate about a television show. It is some really good actors doing a really awful story based on a true story.
Mm.
It's Taron Egerton as this guy who's a criminal of some kind that we don't hate him. I don't know. He probably robbed from rich people or whatever. Anyway, he ends up taking a plea deal where he goes into prison undercover to become friends with this guy who they're pretty sure raped and killed a lot of young girls. But they can't get him to admit, or he claimed to be crazy, or I don't know. For some reason, they can't convict him on a lot of these, and he'll probably get out of jail unless they can get more info. And so he goes in to do this. And it's awful. Even Trish, who watched the whole thing, was like, it's awful. It is mostly watching Taron Egerton in jail having conversations with this creepy guy with these giant sideburns and this weird high-pitched voice that sounds very effective and is very sort of whiny, just talking about creepy shit. And it's one of those, like, he's definitely guilty, and it's just very uncomfortable. And I've been in the room for some of it, and he has this very sort of lilting voice that makes it all the worse. And he's a very large man, and he has his facial hair and the little mutton chop thing and all that, and it's just him talking about his views on women, and they are not good. And again, based on a true story, so real fun. Anyway, point is, in After Party, one of the many, this murder is set at a wedding, a destination wedding kind of thing. And so all of the wedding attendants are around and all guests and everything. And one of them is an ex of the bride. And he's a very stereotype. He wears a fedora. He's always wearing suits, even when other people aren't. He's asking people if they're into cryptocurrency. He assumes he is much more attractive than other people think he is. And I was watching it. I'm like, this guy's cracking me up. And Trisha's like, that's the guy from Blackbird. Like, that's the guy with the mutton chops and everything. And I looked and I'm like, oh my God. So now I like hate him, but I'm also really impressed with his acting skills, because could not be a different role for him. But yeah, so After Party's fun. I hit what I think is an important milestone. I have finally watched the first 4 Hellraiser movies.
Oh, interesting.
And people would say to you, Tony, why is 4 an important number? You're saying the first 4. I assume there are more, which is correct. There are, I believe, like 11 of them at this point.
Oh my gosh.
I believe it's either 10 or 11. Or if you're somebody who's familiar with Hellraiser, you'd be like, why? The first one's good, the second one's okay, and then everyone in the world agrees that they suck after that. Across the board. Why the first 4? And I say to you, have you met me? I watch terrible things. But also, the first 4 movies are a plot. The first 4 movies follow a plot. The movies after that are all, as near as I can tell, variations on, here's a character you've never seen before. Here's them being involved in some creepy shit and trying to solve a mystery. And there's all sorts of gross monsters and things. And then at the end, Pinhead shows up and is like, actually, you're dead and this is hell. Ha 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 ha. The end. And that's basically what all the movies are at this point. But the first 4 are an actual story, albeit a terrible one. The 3rd and 4th movies are very bad. The 4th one is kind of impressively bad in its dialogue. Like, I don't think you can accidentally write lines that bad. But now I've seen it, and now I feel I feel in a more knowledgeable place to speak on Cenobites, which is really all that I've ever. It is funny. Hellraiser is a very hard series for me because I don't like any of them. The point of the Hellraiser movies is, in my opinion, lots of gore and freaky ways to kill people and freaky effects and stuff. And while I'm not necessarily bothered by that, that's never why I seek something out. But the problem is I keep seeking out the Hellraiser movies because the concept, or at least the initial concept behind the Hellraiser movies, is very cool. This idea that there's this puzzle box and people who are hedonists and too extreme, and they've just run out of their numb inside. They've this legendary puzzle box, and if you open it, these beings will show up and take you to new heights of sensation. And what they really are beings from another dimension who are have followed sensation to the point that they don't really have a distinction between pleasure and pain. They are obsessed with the point at the end. And so what really happens when you open the puzzle box is they come and they take you away and they torture you for all eternity. And it's a neat idea. Very soon it becomes, no, they're pretty much just demons. They're basically the devil. And and then we have to get into the origins of the puzzle box and why it got made. And yeah. Awesome. But just that original idea, because originally they were very amoral. They weren't evil creatures. They were just interdimensional beings obsessed with sensations and things like that, and admittedly took it to extremes, and it's really awful. But like they weren't. There was no, this is you're being judged. There was no judgment involved
or punished. You're not really being punished.
Yes, you're not being punished either. And conceptually, I find that fascinating. And there's a lot of material to work with there. And there were books.
It is interesting
that did this stuff. Very quickly though, it's just like, no, they're just nasty demons. It might as well be a Ouija board. You Ouija boarded the bad guys, and they look cool. They look very cool, S&M, bloody, freaky stuff. But so I get very sad about those. Speaking of, though, I want to talk about a trope that has recently hit me. Near the end of a movie, any movie, take your pick. During the climactic battle, the villain says something along the lines of, "I can't die." And this is always immediately followed by them being killed. I mean, take your pick on what level. Why are villains saying this / why are writers still writing this? Because without fail, if you say, "I cannot die, I am immortal," or Lord of the Rings, "I cannot be killed by a man," or whatever, they're always like, "You have no hope," and then immediately die. And it's to the point now where it always feels comical to me. It's always like the villain accidentally just said Jumanji and is gonna get sucked into, like, it's like, oh, you done fucked up now by bragging about your unkillability. It came up in the fourth Hellraiser again too. People were like, "I am eternal." I'm like, especially because I'm always like, how would you know? Like, I haven't been killed yet / things have happened to me that should have killed me and didn't. Not the same as "I cannot die."
Yeah.
And a lot of villains that say it, I'm like, you don't like. Sometimes there are villains who like got the ancient power of the death god, blah blah blah, and with that comes the inability to die. But even then, they usually get killed. But there's a lot of them that are just like, no, I just kind of assume at this point, I'm so badass, I've come back for sequels enough times that I'm just going to assume I'm important. And I don't understand it. Why do they keep saying it? It's not accurate. It's not. I made Trish watch Name of the Rose. You ever see Name of the Rose?
With Sean Connery and
yes, and
Christian Slater.
Baby, Christian Slater, little tiny Christian Slater. Yeah, although he still got the "and" credit on it, which was weird. Because he hadn't really, that was like 2 years before Heathers. He wasn't much of anything yet. He'd done a few things, but he wasn't significant. Every time I see that movie, I have very strongly different reactions to it. There's a lot to that movie, which I actually think there's a lot to the book it's based off of, and there's actually not a lot to that movie. This time I was very keenly aware that there were a lot of parts that I'm like, this is not holding together very well. I'll bet in the book this made way more sense. But this time around, Trish pointed this out. It is an interesting portrait. So for those of you not familiar, Name of the Rose is William's all frozen up, so I'm just going to explain to the rest of you. Name of the Rose is a movie set in the 14th century, where a bunch of monks are going to an abbey to have a debate over Christianity. I don't know, but people are dying in the abbey, and luckily, a monk by the name of Sean Connery shows up and is literally just Sherlock Holmes in the 14th century. Like, very much to the point that at one point he refers to something as elementary, and like they wait a beat to be like, but that's the whole thing, is he's a detective monk in the 14th century, and people are dying, and it looks vaguely like it could be the apocalypse. It's really, I mean, it's not gorgeous. It's actually made to look very dirty and nasty, but it's really spectacular in terms of set design and how it's filmed and everything. It is also what I noticed this time a lot, and Trish mentioned this too. It gives you, so at the historical period in question, abbeys and monasteries, in addition to being their stated things, are really the closest they've got to asylums. And there's a lot of people that go and live a monastic life because basically they have mental health issues that the rest of the world can't cope with. And that is not addressed specifically in Name of the Rose, but a whole bunch of the characters clearly just like have issues that society at the time would not deal with, so they've been cloistered in these abbeys. And so that was kind of interesting. It's a long movie. It's like 2 hours, which surprised me because not a ton happens in it. But I don't know. I never go so far as to say it's a good movie, but I've never regretted watching it. And I've watched it several times.
I think I've only seen it twice. First time I saw it, it didn't make much of an impression. The second time I saw it, I was surprised that it made any impression at all, because the first time it didn't really make much of an impression. But I can't recall what that impression was, especially. I mean, I think I just could appreciate aspects of it that I couldn't appreciate because I'd seen it maybe 10, I don't know, 15 years before. Because and when did it come out? It's pretty old now.
84, I think. It was the 80s, it was mid 80s.
I mean, I think I saw it, like the first time I saw it was on a videotape or something in college. And it's like, I don't care. And then the next time I saw it was probably on Netflix. So, and on a disc from Netflix. So a long time ago, but a long time between when I saw it on a VHS tape and when I saw it on Netflix. And so, I often see movies 15 or 20 years later, and I see things in it that I just didn't appreciate before, because you change, right? You grow up, you have certain experiences.
But I also have the opposite. I'll watch movies and I'm like, this movie is the most amazing thing ever. And then later I'm like, what?
Yeah, both happen. And so I think I did appreciate it more the second time I saw it. But I wouldn't say that I didn't add it to our collection or something. I mean, it was a better film than I had recalled, but not so good that I thought, hey, I should tell everybody how great I think this film is now. But you're right. It is shot very well.
I think I disliked it as a kid when I first saw it because it is very dirty. It's very grungy on purpose.
Yeah.
Like everything is lit very poorly. Everyone's dirty. Everything's nasty. The death. It's not a horror movie in my opinion, but the deaths when you find the bodies later are pretty gross. And it is spooky if you're a young impressionable child. There's lots of, oh, it's dark in here, what's happening? So I remember not particularly like it in the early days, and then I saw it later and I was like, oh, there's a lot here. And now it's one of those weird ones, and as I get older I get more and more of these where I can't settle on an opinion because certain aspects of it are so good and certain aspects of it are so bad that I really just have to say, what do I think about this movie? Well, it's complicated.
Yeah, yeah.
but it's one that is very fun to pick apart in terms of like, that was a really good decision on their part.
Mm,
That was a
mm,
really
mm,
bad. Or
mm.
I think the filmmaker might have actually been trying to say this just poorly. Or the filmmaker ignored all of this messaging that I don't think was intentional, but is really inappropriate. And yeah, it's just an interesting one to sort of. The one I always hold up is a movie that I haven't seen in years. That's a biopic about T.S. Eliot, I think, called Tom and Viv. And what I remember most about it is every single aspect of that film was either incredible or terrible. And I can't remember all the specifics, but it was like the acting was great, the editing was crap, the writing was great, the shooting, like I just every single thing was like some of the best I'd seen and some of the worst I'd seen in such weird ways that I'm like really into that movie, but I wouldn't say it's a good movie, but I wouldn't say it's a bad movie. Same kind of deal. I should
Yeah.
rewatch that, see if I feel that way again.
I mean, I think Name of the Rose, I think aesthetically was really trying to make the viewer to transport the viewer to a time that was cold and dark and superstitious and scared and scary. I think it did a
Yeah.
pretty good job of that. I mean, I think when you watch it, you always feel like, God, I'm glad I don't live in that time and place. That would be terrible. I think it succeeds in that. I don't know what else it succeeds in
Uh,
that it's trying to do,
Also,
but
it's got a Ron Perlman in it without Guillermo del Toro and just fully off the leash. He is acting the shit out of this
yeah,
thing, and
I
it's
forgot about that.
hilarious slash gross because he's clearly like developmentally has an issue or whatever, and he just does all sorts of crazy stuff. And his whole deal is that he doesn't speak in one language. He's constantly switching English, Italian, Latin, Spanish. So it comes out as gibberish to most people because he just like switches around for no reason.
I mean, he went through a phase where that's the only kind of gig he could get.
Oh yeah,
Quasimodo, or something like this.
Guillermo del Toro saved his life. Kronos happened, and ever since then, Ron Perlman has had a steady gig.
Where he gets like really good speaking parts.
Yeah.
And he gets to
Well,
act other
and
than
he's
just
never not in a Guillermo del Toro movie. I believe he's literally been in every single one because Kronos was, or at least feature length one, because Kronos was the first feature length, and he was in that, and he's in all of them. Sometimes it's a small part, but he's in all of them. The two are just like best friends, and he does other stuff. I mean, I grew up. My love of Ron Perlman is my mom and I would watch Beauty and the Beast, the TV show with Linda Hamilton, which again I hadn't seen Terminator, so to me Linda Hamilton is Beauty from Beauty and the Beast, and Ron Perlman is the cat-looking dude named Vincent, because that was his beast. Was he had long hair and he had kind of a cat muzzle. That was it.
yeah, I guess he got to do some acting in that. I never watched that, but I
We
shouldn't
loved that,
I shouldn't say he
and it
doesn't
was
act in
only
these
years later.
other things. He does. It's hard to play those parts. But I mean, act is in like a leading man type of acting where
No.
you get to really, I don't know, you know what I'm talking about. And
Yeah,
they just didn't give him because I don't know, something about how he looks or his size or whatever. They
yeah.
thought, oh,
I don't think he's considered leading man material.
yeah, he's gonna grunt, or he's gonna be a
Yeah,
character that doesn't get to say very much, or is gonna be all in makeup or whatever. Like, okay, but
only good Hellboy. I love David Harbour, but come
very
on,
good
only good
Hellboy. He
Hellboy.
was a very
Yeah.
good Hellboy. So yeah, but I don't want to
I
I don't want
always
to
liked
diminish
him.
those other acting jobs because they're also
Yeah.
difficult and hard and challenging. He was great in them, but
And to be fair, I love Ron Perlman. 80% of what he's in is pretty garbage. And it's not his fault necessarily,
yeah.
but just he's in crap. And it's fine. I like crap, but I'm not going to pretend that Ron Perlman should be getting any Oscars or anything.
He delivers though. I mean, I
He
think everything
does.
I've ever seen him in, he's
He
like,
does what he's
yeah,
but he is, I mean, he was in fucking Mutant Chronicles. Like he's in some really bad things.
yeah.
Um
Well,
but he always delivers. And actually Kronos is one of his better roles in my opinion because he's an actual person
yep,
and
yep.
not like a mutant or anything like that.
Right, right.
Um I lose track. Mutant, monster, devil, whatever. No, he's just a dude in that one. But yeah, so Name of the Rose was a fun revisit there. Not a lot else going on though, and that's how I like it. So I'm just trying to get back to normal. We still have leftovers. We're getting to the point where stuff's either going to go in the freezer or the trash because it's been a while now. But I have yet to have to really do much shopping. So, new thing this year, we apparently have some emails. So maybe you should read one of those.
Mm. All right, let's see.
One of them big juicy emails. I hope it's not in reference to comments people have made because I'm bad and I'm not on them, but I will get on them.
The title of this email is Candy. It's from Azure Talon.
Candy.
Dear low-level functionaries of the apocalypse. Oh, well, he got the memo on that, I guess. Proving that I'll buy anything a McElroy tells me to, I've bought Chupa Chupa. Chupa Chupa? Chupa Chups? Chupa, what is
Chupa
it?
Chups, all right.
Yeah,
Chupa
Chupa
Chups are a thing. Yeah.
Chupa Chup. I thought that. I don't have my
It's
glasses.
not
on,
like
so
it's
that'll-
handwritten.
I know, but I'm supposed to have glasses and I don't wear them, so
Up your font size, Grandpa.
I know I could just make it bigger, but whatever. I'd have never noticed random lollipops without Griffin pointing them out, but they are good. What other lesser known treats are hiding out there? Azure Talon totally listening to the answer on Raycons, which does not sponsor
On
this
Raycons. Nice.
does not
Are those
sponsor
any
this
good?
podcast.
No.
I mean, people advertise them all the time. So
They do. That doesn't necessarily mean they're good. And to be fair, they stick into your ear, so I don't want them. But people do advertise them a lot. For those of you not in the loop, which is apparently also Azure Talon. So in the US, we have a sucker called Dum Dums. I'm looking for some sort of acknowledgement from you that you've heard of Dum Dums.
well, yes, I've heard of them. They're also a very popular thing for like doctors' offices or banks to have for the kids to grab because they're very small and they're very cheap. Dum Dums.
Yeah, and tasty. I love Dum Dums. I believe they are unique to the US.
Oh,
I have
didn't know
never
that.
seen them outside the US or heard of anybody. Chupa Chups are essentially Dum Dums in the rest of the world.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know how much of the rest of the world, but I do know that they are commonly known and accepted by everyone in both Mexico and the UK. So to me, that's probably a pretty broad spectrum.
Canada too, I suppose.
I don't know for sure.
Oh no.
I try not to talk to them. And I like them, but to me, they're basically Dum Dums.
Okay, well, I've never had them.
And my favorite Dum Dums are the mystery flavors. So, ever since I saw the episode of Unwrapped where they talked about Dum Dums, and I found out that the mystery flavor is just in between flavors.
Oh, in between what flavors?
They're running them through the line, so like they're running like blueberry through the line, and then they're going to switch to root beer. So they don't clean out the line. They just put the root beer in, and all the ones that aren't 100% blueberry or 100% root beer become mystery flavor.
Oh, so you really don't know what you're getting.
Well, and I was always wondering because I already knew I would open up mystery flavors that were not the same color as other mystery flavors I had before. So I'm like, so it's not a single thing. But yeah, apparently it's that. And I was like mixing flavors like that. In fact, you know what my favorite drink was growing up, soft drink wise?
Mixing them all together?
No, although I did that a lot.
Yeah.
No, my favorite, and I do not know why, it just hit the right combination for a unique flavor that I really enjoy. Root beer, lemonade. It makes this very weird tang that you kind of can't achieve with anything else, and I really like it. It's very tasty. It is almost a mystery flavor of beverages.
When I was
But
growing
yes, I
up,
did also mix them together a lot.
if someone, so if you're working at the concession stand at the football field or something or whatever, which I sometimes did, if someone came up and said they wanted a suicide, it just meant they wanted a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
which I never thought tasted like anything at all. Just like the flavors didn't mix or mingle very well. It just tasted like a sweet nothing to me.
I
But a
would I
lot of
would
kids,
incline to agree. I mean, it never tasted bad, but yeah, sort of just generic in a way.
yeah, nothing.
Um, I liked the impact on other people, like showing off by doing that. We called it a zombie, but both are. I think there are other terms as well.
Yeah.
Um, and especially if it's self-serve, I would do that, and I would convince myself I could do something. So it's not exactly a little bit of each. I'd be like, oh, this one's going to be a little more Sprite heavy, and
Mhm.
try and
Mhm.
finesse it. And I don't think anything ever came of it. But I never ordered that way. It was only if you had self-serve. So
Yeah, I did that a couple times. I remember thinking, I can't decide what to get. Well, I'll get them all. And then immediately realized my mistake. It's like it doesn't really scratch any of those itches. You really
no.
should pick.
Well, I think you can do two. I think you can do two. There are some
Yeah.
great drinks out there like the
Uh,
Arnold Palmer and things like that. But it's exactly let's mix two things together. If it's like let's mix eight things together, well, you're not going to get anything.
no, you're not going to get anything
You're
out of
going to
that.
get gray.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
crazy.
there's a line in Be Our Guest, the Disney song called the Be Our Guest song from Disney. There's a line that says, "Try the gray stuff; it's delicious."
Mhm.
I haven't seen Beauty and the Beast, so I don't know what the gray stuff looked like, but I assume it looked like gray stuff. At Disney World, you can go have a Beauty and the Beast themed, I think it's tea or whatever, but it's one of the various meals with characters things. And they have, among other things, gray stuff that apparently is really good. I don't know what it is. I didn't go. Anyway, one time I'm making mashed potatoes, and I really like to cook them till they fall apart and whip them up till they're just sort of, I like them to be more like whipped potatoes. And I also like to put a lot of dairy in there, so I think I put in some cream cheese and some butter and stuff like this and all this. And then to season it, I put in salt, but I put in black volcanic salt that I have.
Mm.
So I thought it would be really good. And it was super tasty. It did then turn the entire thing into a uniform gray paste, which I
Mm.
then attempted to serve to my wife. And the only way I could get by is by saying, try the gray stuff. It's delicious. Because it was. It was very delicious. But that's also when we learned that Trish and I look for different things in our mashed potatoes. And it may be the wedge issue that destroys our marriage eventually. We'll have to see. We
All
have
right.
very different takes on
Are we
mashed
ever going to talk
potatoes.
about candy though? Azure Town really wants us
Candies.
to talk about candy.
All right, go for it.
So I used to be hugely into candy. Not that I ate a lot of it. I just thought it was interesting how many types there were. And I would try different kinds, but I didn't have a lot of candy around or whatever. I just thought candy was, I don't know, fun and interesting. And I'd try some. And if I liked it, maybe I'd buy it again. But, I've never really been that much into sweets outside of like, donuts and cookies and stuff. But anyway, when I was a kid, one of my favorite candies was, and I probably talked about them already, dinosaur eggs. And they came in a box, and when you took it out, it looked like a little egg, and they were just a jawbreaker, really, where if you sucked on it, it would change flavors and change flavors until it got to a center that was like a um those lollipops that are just made of like powder, like hardened powder or whatever. Do you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about? That
yeah,
that
yeah,
was that's what was at the middle of
yeah.
these things.
So
And it was
this sounds
sour.
just like a egg-shaped sour gobstopper.
That's exactly what it was. But for some reason I liked them better than
Well, sour
the
is
other
a
ones.
thing. Sour
Yeah,
is
that's
to
part of
this
it.
day is very powerful in the candy world.
And I could have sworn at that time, and this is in the 80s, It was a Wonka product, or it was marketed as a Wonka thing.
Yes.
And I don't remember who owned Wonka back then. I think Nestle
I
owns them
mean,
now.
it came up recently in a McElroy Brothers thing. The answer is complicated. Wonka has been owned by a variety of people, and the products that were in the Wonka line have been split in some cases, and so some things are different all over.
But I really,
And
really
I
like
think
those.
technically the people who own the rights to the term Wonka in terms of candy right now are essentially doing almost nothing with it, even though there's a big movie coming out. Sorry, I digress. I
Well, the
think I
reason,
remember seeing these. I don't think I remember having them, but the term dinosaur egg, like, and I also was big into candy. I ate a lot of it too. But a very common thing in my youth was let's walk to the 7-Eleven or the Circle K,
yeah, yeah,
and
me
we'd
too,
get
too.
a Slurpee or an icy, and we'd get a bunch of candy. And sometimes we frequently it was a very economic, it was very complicated. We didn't have spreadsheets, but it was like, okay, I have $5.
Yeah.
It's gonna cost me $1 for the Slurpee. What am I get? How can I get the most out of my $4? And that was back when we still had penny and nickel candy on the bottom shelf, and that was a factor. But then there were certain kinds you wanted to get.
Well, my high school was just a half a block away from a store um, that was that was on the square, was on Melcher Square, and it was still an old fashioned store with wood floors and a candy counter with the glass, and you could look in there and point to the guy, tell him what you wanted.
Yeah.
And so if I ever had any money, and it would never be $5, it would be like maybe $1, maybe 75 cents. I would go there and just get really one thing, maybe two. And they had all kinds of they didn't just have the stuff you could find, because Casey's was catty corner from there, and you could find everything there, Snickers, Butterfinger, but there was some sort of unique candies that they had that you couldn't
You
get.
said Butterfinger butt.
Anyway, so yeah, I could get dinosaur eggs there. I could get Jolly Ranchers there, and they used to have the long flat sticks. I don't think they even have those anymore.
Yes, which I think I have seen them, although they might be smaller now. Those were the worst idea. Like, let's have a piece of hard candy, but have it be like 5 inches long. Like,
Yeah,
there's no best case scenario. Your hand is still just coated, but because you're eating like a banana or a popsicle, and even if you wrap the end, which some kids didn't, some kids are just like, oh,
yeah, yeah.
but like I remember even as a kid, and I would buy them, but being like, these are really messy. This was poorly engineered.
But usually if I so that's the time in my life where I would maybe find a candy that I could meet someone who didn't come from a small town that had 100-year-old candy uh uh display or whatever, might not know the candies that I'm getting there. But the only time I hear of unusual or unique candies or exotic candies or whatever is when I hear of some candy that's made in some other country. And
Which is the common one.
I don't run into those on a day-to-day basis, and I don't eat as much candy even as I used to back then, which was admittedly not very often.
Uh, there's a European grocery store in Iowa City, and I've meant to check it out for a while. And so at the holiday season, I went. And unfortunately, it's not got British stuff, so no jelly babies for me. Jelly babies might be my favorite candy in the world. I don't know. They're really good. Um, it's mostly appears to be sort of an Eastern European grocery.
Mm.
And it's funny because I sent a bunch of things to different people. And I was talking to my sister on Christmas, and I said some of it came from there. She says, that explains it. Because there's this weird exotic gourmet Kit Kat looking thing. And we were like, what is this? Is this like British or what? And it turns out it's made in like Serbia or something.
Mm.
Like, but it was tasty. All right, let me hit my big ones. Because going to the convenience store and buying candy is a large part of my adolescent identity. I'm just now realizing that it's kind of sad, but there it is. Uh, Nickel Nips, the little wax soda bottles.
Mm.
I loved those conceptual, and I bought them often. I have to phrase it that way because even as a child, I don't think I remember thinking they tasted good because they didn't. They were wax cola bottles that had different colors inside, and it was basically just syrup, and it was not good. But something about the wax bottle, and you bite it open. It didn't have a lid. You literally tore into the wax and you would drink it, and then you would have the wax and you would chew on the wax and things like that. That's
Well,
probably what it was. It was probably one of the better oral fixation based candies out there.
I mean, I don't think you were supposed to drink it. I think you're just supposed to chew it up, and then the flavor gets infused in the wax, and it's kind of then it becomes kind of a a relatively short lasting gum. Pretty soon, it's just the wax which you can't really swallow, and then you have to spit it out.
Then why do you make it pop bottles?
It's a well because it's a gimmick. It's like those candies that have that or those gum. There's gum that has a liquid inside, and you chew it, and it sort of squirts out while you chew it.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
supposed to create that kind of sensation, but if you chew it, like I said, it infuses the wax. So you chew the wax for a little bit longer until the flavor goes away, and then it's just that kind of gross wax, and then you spit it out.
See, I don't think I'm not sure I buy this because I feel like sometimes I did just like put the whole thing in and bite it, and it doesn't infuse. Like it's too thin. It immediately is just you're drinking it whether you like it or not.
Mm.
But to be fair, this was 30 some odd years ago.
Well, there were other wax
And there
candies
weren't
that were like that.
instructions.
There were other wax
See,
candies that
the
were like that.
only
You were
other
supposed to
wax
chew.
candies I can think of are like wax lips
Mhm.
that had almost no flavor.
Mhm,
The
mhm.
whole deal was just like I never was into those.
Yeah.
Which is again surprising because I like chewing on stuff, but I
They
don't
still
know.
make some of those wax things like those.
I think they do.
Yeah.
I don't like them, but I think they do. Um, Sixlets, which still exist, are not particularly obscure. I love them. They are little tiny colored balls, and they are delicious. And there are two reasons why they are delicious. One, the candy shell actually has some flavor, so it's not like M&Ms where if you closed your eyes you couldn't tell what color you were eating. Like they're actually a little different. But the big one, and I've never encountered anything else like this, Sixlets have chocolate in them and carob. I don't know why. Carob is a chocolate substitute.
Often, yeah.
So I don't know why, like somebody who can't eat chocolate still can't eat these, but there's carob. I didn't understand this until years later. I just knew that Sixlets were a kind of chocolate that was different. I liked it. And now I realize that it's this weird combination of chocolate flavor and carob mixes in just a way that I to this day, I really like those. I really like Sixlets.
Also, when I was growing up, there was this thing called I forget what it's called. It came in a package where you had this sweetened powder, and then there was this other white
Yes.
chalk-like
It
thing,
had
and you'd dip in
several
something.
names based on region and based on the brand versus the product. But the two terms that will potentially ring a bell to you are either Lickamade or Fun Dip.
Fun Dip, I think it was here, maybe.
Yeah. Yes. Loved these. Loved these.
So then we started taking Kool-Aid packs. And if you made the Kool-Aid without the water, that's what you had. You had that dip. You just put like if making Kool-Aid was
powder and a shit ton of sugar.
Yeah, 2 cups of sugar or something, and you put that in a bag instead of a thing of water, that was that dip. And then you could just, dip a spoon or something in it if you
genius.
wanted,
That's genius.
So
I love that.
We just made our own. But we didn't have anything to dip it in, but
Yeah, but also those were nothing.
Well,
Those tasted like vanilla
so
chalk.
then you had the pixie stick is what you had. You had pixie stick filling is what you
Yes.
had, and so you can just eat it, which
Um,
we did sometimes.
well, because that's the thing. When I would take the little stick, you lick it and it puts a little fine. That was not enough for me. So I would get to where I would like get in there and like, and it'd be like a heaping pile on the top, and I would frequently miss my mouth. And I don't remember originally what the third flavor was, but eventually it became a grape one, I think a strawberry one. Maybe it was grape, strawberry, and orange originally, but eventually one of those was replaced by color and flavor changing one. Specifically, it was blue and it tasted like blue raspberry, and then after a second, it turned green and it tasted like green apple, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that does sound cool.
And then I think this was to compete with the fun size bars or whatever. You could sometimes get one that was just a single stick and a single flavor of powder. The traditional one was 2 sticks and 3 flavors of powder.
Mm.
But they had like individual ones for holidays and stuff like that. Those were good. And I think those still exist too. And those are also incredibly unhygienic.
And there was this thing you could get. It was about a foot long, and it was caramel and chocolate. I think it was called a marathon. Do you remember those?
Marathon was the name of Snickers in the UK for many years.
No, I think there was something called it was just it, and it was kind of a plated design of caramel and chocolate, and it was about this long, and the caramel was very chewy, kind of like slow pokes. Did you ever have slow pokes? Which was
I know of them. I don't think I ate them, but yeah.
Their slow pokes are very similar to
Sugar Daddy, or
I get was a that's really hard and chewy. There's another brand that's just like it, but anyway,
Cowtails is nowadays does that. Yeah.
That's right.
Which
that's right.
I think Cowtails is fairly recent, but that's the one you see these days. Yeah.
But the marathon bar was like that, except it was that kind of chewy caramel covered in chocolate, and it was like a plated or like a braided design, relatively flat and about this long in the package, about a foot long in the package. I mean, they advertised on TV.
I never heard of this. I think you imagined it.
I'm not sure why they called them that. I suppose it took them a long time to eat them, I guess.
Let's talk about licorice.
Yeah.
I mean, full start here. Let's just do black licorice. Feelings? Are you a black licorice person?
I don't. I mean, I think I am now. I didn't dislike it ever in my life, but I wouldn't have like picked it. Now I think I would. And I'm kind of confused actually by the whole thing, because to me licorice was a style of making candy, or the way the candy looked. It wasn't like just one flavor. Whereas now I feel like only the black stuff's licorice, everything else is something else. But am I wrong about that? Maybe I don't.
For the first time ever, you're making me regret that my dad's dead.
What are you talking about? But I do like black licorice.
My dad would go on about this because I was a big fan of red licorice.
Okay.
And my dad used to love to say that's not actually licorice. Licorice is tied to that flavor, and black licorice is the only actual licorice.
Yeah,
and everything else. He would talk about this with like white chocolate in the same way.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
And I mean, I think that is true. I think originally licorice was a flavor. And yeah, it got co-opted because people were like, what if we make something similar but doesn't taste like garbage? Let's also call it licorice.
You don't like black licorice, huh?
I've never liked black licorice. Yeah, and I've gotten fooled. So many candies in my youth were secretly licorice. Good and Plenty's were the real tricky one. They're so bright, or whatever. And
root beer hard candy. Some root beer hard candies are really just licorice. I've noticed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know some country, I think Finland, Scandinavia in general is really obsessed with licorice, and specifically salted licorice.
Yeah, I've heard that.
which
I
just
don't ever
sounds
think I've ever
awful to
had
me.
it, but
All right, so let's set that aside. Let's set all the new flavors aside nowadays. You know, you get Wallabies, soft Australian green apple, and Twizzlers does a red licorice. Twizzlers or red vines? And answer very carefully. The future of the podcast may depend on how you answer this.
well, um, see, I'm not a big fan of red licorice anyway.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm not sure that I would. I think Twizzlers red licorice seems to not have a lot of flavor, and it's a little too chewy. So just about any other brand besides them and red licorice, I think I would prefer.
But I mean, there really are only red vines and Twizzlers these days.
Well, then that's
Even
the
if
only
you
other one
see
I'd have.
another version, it either tastes like a Twizzler or tastes like a red vine.
Sure.
Because I mean, good on you. I shall allow you to live. Because that is the correct answer. There weren't Twizzlers when I grew up. I mean, there probably were, but that was not. If you had licorice, you had it. And what was very common that you could buy in like concession stands and stuff like that is a rope of red licorice.
Like
And
in
it
Wayne's
was
World.
very possibly, I haven't seen it, but very possibly. And it was about a foot long, and it wasn't like a red vine in terms of texture. It didn't have a hole in the middle. It was a very solid piece of licorice. But I would say the flavor was similar to red vine. And that is the flavor of much. And now if I get red vines, that it has that sense memory. I have always found Twizzlers to taste like plastic with a hint of fruit.
Yeah, me too.
Like I on rare occasion have eaten them because that's the thing. They're winning. Like
yeah, that's what you can
Twizzlers
find.
is the most popular by a hefty margin. And I don't blame people because if you did red vines have a very specific sort of flavor. And if you didn't like that flavor, that would be terrible. And it's very different from Twizzlers. So I don't necessarily blame anyone. But to me, it just tastes like plastic. And I have them every once in a while because everybody else loves them. So like when we go to Virginia Beach, there's always Twizzlers in there. And every once in a while I grab one. I'm like, maybe I'll try again. And there are variations. I've had the rainbow flavored ones, and some of those flavors are better. They're still kind of plasticky. The pull and peel ones are a little different. They make variations, but straight Twizzlers, kind of fruity plastic. Do not.
Yeah, that's my experience with them also. Not a fan.
Now, I have one for you. You might be too old for rock candy. No. Treacle. No. Just a mashed up sugar beet. No, Zots.
Yeah, Zots.
Do you know Zots?
Sure.
I don't know what age I was, but I do remember a time before Zots and a time after Zots. And Zots were weird because they were kind of a bandolero.
Yeah, they were individually wrapped, but you could get them in like.
But they were hooked in like six in a line.
That's right.
And I think they said like fizzing candy or exploding candy or something.
Yep.
We were like, what the hell? So we got them and we put them in our mouth. It's just a hard candy. It's not bad hard candy. They were tasty. We're walking home, and I don't remember which one of us, but one of my friends was like, "Oh my god!" And we're like, "What?" Like it just broke in my mouth. And then it became an obsession.
Yeah.
So for a while, we were getting Zots and like trying to suck the stuff out, or like see how long you could go before you hit the middle, because it was this big sour thing inside that fizzed.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought those were the most fun things for a long time.
I kind of forgot about those.
Yeah, that's what this is all about. This is the joy that Azure Talent has brought us. Butterfinger butt.
I think Zots had been around for a little while.
Yeah, I suspect that they just didn't come to where I was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we could get Zots, and when I was a kid.
because I remember when we experienced dots. I don't know how old I was. I mean, I was
And
old
pop
enough to walk to 7-Eleven, so I was probably at least 8 or 9.
and pop rocks too,
Yep.
which were really popular for a brief time, and then they were
And then
gone.
not,
Now
and
they're
then they've had
mm,
cycles. I think you can still get them now, but they're not particularly big now. But they had a resurgence a couple of times. Technically, the initial pop rocks boom was before I was old enough to give a shit, I think.
oh yeah, I
Um,
was pretty young when pop rocks were a thing.
and I did think those were fun. Uh, there was also a phase where they were putting them in other things. There was like a Pop Rocks chocolate bar and stuff. It didn't work.
Do
It
you
wasn't.
think so? I just remember, I think one of the reasons I've always been fascinated by candy is because some people do the things like Zots and other things that are so interesting. And actually, you're right. The wax soda bottle thing, that's interesting. That's very creative. And then when the Willy Wonka movie came out and he's making all these, you know, almost magical candies or whatever, that fit with your experience of going to the candy store because there was a lot of stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Is there less stuff like that now? I wonder. I mean, I'm not really into candy like I used to be, but it feels like
No, I think there
nobody's doing
still
anything fun or
is.
interesting.
Well, and actually, here's the funny bit to this. So, if you go, which I do on rare occasion, to a store like Joanne Fabrics or a lot of craft stores in general, I'll put it this way: a place where a mom might like to go for fun that a child would definitely not like to go to.
Sure, right.
So it's a lot of craft stores, but Joanne Fabrics is the one I know. By the cash register, they have candies. And it's very clearly like the whole thing is just so transparently parents are like, if you're good, when we get there, you can get something. And there have been a lot of interesting ones because Trish would get them for me because I would go with her to Joanne's and it's boring as shit. But then I got to get candy, and now it's become a thing. I don't usually go with her, but like if for some reason she goes, she buys me a thing there, and the weirder the better for me. So there's a lot of ones involving sour. So like the baby bottle pops were big, where there's just a little like there's a heart. It looks like a bottle, like a baby bottle, but
Mm,
the nipple is hard candy,
mm,
and inside is powder, and it's kind of a Lickamade thing. So you're supposed to
mm.
like dump it in, and then you suck on it for a while.
Oh, that's interesting.
Um, there were versions similar to that with paintbrush candy looking thing. Uh, Necco wafers. Do we all remember Necco wafers? Necco wafers went
Sure.
away and then came back. I
Yep.
always
Necco
thought
wafers.
Necco wafers were the candy for if I had been bad. Like, here's the
Yeah.
thing. I'm not Catholic. I am not anything. I have never accepted communion. Necco wafers are what I imagine the body of Christ tastes like. Like, I think the clove flavored one specifically, because yes, one of the Necco wafer flavors is clove. I
Oh,
think the body of Christ tastes like a clove Necco wafer. I've always assumed.
well, I'm pretty sure you're wrong about that, but that's very interesting.
The flavor,
Yes.
or
The flavor. Yes.
so it's a different Necco wafer, is what you're saying. The body of Christ tastes like a different flavor of Necco wafer, like the wintergreen or
Oh
the
my
chocolate
God.
one that
Oh
didn't
my
taste like
God.
anything.
I mean, I'm not Catholic, and even I'm feeling uncomfortable with this.
You don't know. He was like, "Eat of these Necco wafers, for they are my body."
Oh no.
Uh, on Mock the Week years ago, James Acaster did a bit. It was things you wouldn't read in the Bible, and he had one that said that Jesus brought to them all and passed out cans of Dr. Pepper and said, "Drink of these, for they are my body." Because yes, that's my full name, Dr. Jesus Pepper. So
Oh wow. That's pretty good.
We watched a weird ass show last night on Hulu called Drag Me to Dinner.
Hmm.
Let me paint you a picture.
Okay.
Neil Patrick Harris,
Uh-huh.
his husband, David Burka, who I always thought of as just a pretty face on the E Network, but apparently does cooking. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Murray Hill, who is an actor we have just discovered in Somebody Somewhere, who is like if an old vaudeville man just came to life in 2023. He's amazing. I also think he's trans, but whatever. Some famous drag queen I've never heard of, and an actress who has showed up in Murderville. And do you remember the lady who was dating Hank Azaria in Hello Tomorrow?
Yes.
Is her.
Oh,
So
she's
these
good.
people
She's really good.
are just on a TV show.
Hmm.
And each episode they bring in two pairs of drag queens. And they have a set amount of time to turn a blank empty living room into a party. And then all of those people I mentioned go to each party and judge them. And then somebody wins a golden cheese grater at the end. It's a reality show. And it's a reality show about making a fun dinner party, but you're drag queens. I enjoyed it. I have to dance around this very quickly. I love drag as an art form and an entertainment form. And I am very into the expression people can do and playing around with their gender via drag. It's great. I have some drag queens that I'm really fans of. I think they're wonderful. Overall, the comedy and humor associated with the drag communities often to me seems very focused on genital based puns for lack of a better. It's a lot of puns about naughty bits. And I don't know. Like, and this is why, like, I've only ever seen one episode of Drag Race. And the only reason we watched that is because Kumail and his wife were judges. And so we watched an episode. Like, I think it's great, it's wonderful. It's not my thing, from what I can tell. And admittedly, I haven't dove too deep into it, but it's a lot of jokes about how people have genitals, and I'm just not. It's not that funny.
Well, my understanding, and I probably have the least understanding of anybody, but my understanding is it's just a form of burlesque. So it's kind of inherently blue, I guess, is what I understand. Yeah. So, I mean, what you're saying seems to track what my.
You also could argue it's a form of stand-up and a lot. It's a very sort of multi-hyphenate kind of thing. A lot of drag queens now have tours, and in the tours they do stand-up, they do some songs, they do some set pieces, variety. Sure. But yeah. No, you're very in that, and so it is overall not my thing. In terms of the content, like I love drag queen, and again, I think we recently talked about how there was the drag queen. Brennan Lee Mulligan ran some drag queens through D&D for the first time, and that was a great time. I had a great time with that. It was wonderful. But I don't really care about this, so I wasn't really interested. But Trish kind of made me watch it, and I don't understand how much this matches up with like other shows of this type. But I came out of it thinking it was a real fun time, and I don't think Trish did. It is very open about its awkwardness. Like, things just go wrong and it just happens, and there's lots of times with people being like, I don't even understand what's going on right now. And I don't know, I found that really fun. It is very much a little goes a long way. I think we will wait a while to watch another episode. Kind of, there's a lot of shows like Nailed It, Is It Cake? Netflix has a ton of these shows that are real fun to watch, like one episode every week or so.
Right.
And so I think we will take our time, but it was pretty fun. Oh, but it did remind me, I watched the Christmas special of Doctor Who so the first official one with the new Doctor.
Oh, yeah, we haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus, and Disney Plus is gonna take over the distribution now.
Hmm.
So in spring, when the new season starts, it's just on Disney Plus, which I'm excited about because I usually had to wait like a year for it to show up on Max because I
Yeah,
don't have BBC America or anything. So I'm kind of
yeah,
excited about that.
we did too. Yeah.
Um, I am really curious to see how this new Doctor goes.
Hmm.
He is very different.
Hmm.
He is quite young. He is giving off a ton of queer energy, which to be fair, the actor is queer. But like he literally the outfit we saw him in to begin with was an actual he's a young black man and he was dressed in what we in America would call a wife beater vest and a kilt and dancing with a bunch of guys on the dance floor and like that was his introduction. It was so incredibly not a Doctor Who moment. And things he's called like he's very physical. There's a whole scene where he's like essentially running along rooftops beside somebody while having banter, and he's literally like I'm sure they had stuff, but he's vaulting things himself. Um, he's very emotional in a way that I'm really enjoying. I don't know. He just feels very different. He feels very young and very queer in a way that none of the other doctors have felt to me, and I'm very excited for that.
Interesting.
Also, his companion so far seems really cool. Um, they have done a few things. This is the problem when you're dealing with a TV show that's been on the air for 60 years. How many different ways can the doctor bump into a new, generally speaking, young woman and have her accidentally find out he's a time travel and have her decide she wants to go with him time travel? Like there's only so many, but they kind of mixed it up this time in a way that I kind of enjoyed. So no, I am excited for that. So but yeah, go
Cool.
check out the special. It's pretty fun. It's also got some good visual effects. It's got some really good practical effects that I enjoy. So
Good.
yeah, we're over time now. I don't know why I'm avoiding. I think I probably have some dishes. I don't know, something. That's what this podcast has always been for me is 13 years of getting out of my chores. Ironically, by doing a bunch of extra work. But um if you'd like to join us in 2024, write in the magical talking hat at gmail.com and tell us all of your 2024 observations or concerns or hopes or dreams or manifestos. Also, go to the blog, magicaltalkinghat.com, and comment. William doesn't pay attention. I usually do. I'm just, I'll get to it soon, I promise. Please don't leave. Um, Also, listen next week. We will do this again, and the week after that. And I mean, it's gonna keep going like this. So, enjoy it, or no, just enjoy it. Don't no other options.